Hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for another story here at Annie Narrates. The title for this one goes like this. Father abandons me and grandma because his new wife doesn't want us. But now she's abandoned him too, and he wants to play family again. So I remind him what he did by doing a family gathering, and now he wants me to apologize because he thinks I went too far. So the story starts with my dad, a male 56, let's call him John, who left us on our own about 2 years ago, us being me, female 28, and my grandma, female 75, who raised me pretty much all on her own after my mom passed away when I was barely 3 years old. John met this random woman, whom we'll refer to as Brenda, online one day. They had a whirlwind romance and decided to get married within a few months of dating. Things were fine for a bit, and then all of a sudden, John announced that he was moving in with Brenda across the state and that we were welcome to come visit whenever we wanted to, but Brenda, quote, doesn't feel comfortable with us living there. It's a fresh start, he told us, as if that made it better. Grandma and I were devastated. He promised to check in on us, visit often, and support us in whatever way we needed. But spoiler alert, he didn't. Not a call, not a text, not a penny. He was totally MIA. Fast forward to last week, when I got a call from a very devastated John out of the blue about how Brenda had left him. It turns out she had a whole other life, another family, and had used him for his money. Call me petty if you would like, but my first thought was that this was his karma for the way that he treated his own family. He rambled on about it for a bit and eventually told me that he was back in the state, crashed over at a friend's place, and was at complete rock bottom. He claimed that he wanted to reconnect and rebuild our family. Let me tell you, my blood pressure went nuclear when I heard that. Here's the thing, I get it, I really do. People make mistakes in life, but this wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. He chose Brenda over us. He chose to abandon his own daughter and his elderly mother. The woman who raised him, and me for that matter, for no less than 2 freaking years. He chose to ignore our pleas, our pain, all of it. So what gave him the right to expect that he could just dance back into our lives and be forgiven, oh so easily? Was it not unfair? And that's why I decided he needed to be taught a lesson before being welcomed back with open arms. I decided to organize a family gathering, and I made sure I invited everyone, aunts, uncles, cousins, and even the neighbors who helped grandma when John was missing in action. I did not tell John the guest list, I just said it was a small welcome back thing to celebrate his return. So on the day of the celebration, he walked in with a hopeful face and bam! The room fell completely silent. Everyone stared at him, their expressions ranging from pity to disappointment to outright anger. My grandma, bless her heart, just came forward and hugged John, tears streaming down her face. But the silence around us spoke volumes. John tried to make small talk, oblivious as ever. But my Aunt Sarah, never one to mince her words, cut him right off. So John, care to explain why you abandoned your daughter and mother to roam around with some gold digger across the state? She asked him sternly. The room erupted after that. Accusations started flying. John stumbled, stammered, tried, and failed to apologize. But it was all too late. The damage was done. He left the gathering early, red-faced and embarrassed. Now he's blowing up my phone, calling me names, and telling me that I went quote-unquote too far, and that I'm punishing him for his mistake. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? Because frankly, I don't feel even slightly bad. John deserves whatever punishment he gets. He dug his own grave, and now he'll get the taste of karma. Thanks for all the comments and support. Some folks are saying that I should forgive John because he's still my father and that he's being apologetic. So I shouldn't push him away. Let me be clear, forgiveness is a long way off. He needs to earn it. And that starts with understanding the hurt that he caused us. Not just saying sorry because it's convenient for him now. I might sound harsh, but so was he while abandoning us. So that's that. On the other hand, I got a text from John a couple of days ago, saying how he got in touch with and spoke to Brenna's family. He said that he found out that she was not who she seemed. Immediately, a part of me felt like this might just be a bit to get me to talk to him, but I was too intrigued not to take that bait. So I agreed to meet up with him like he asked to figure out what all this was about. And what I learned was that, according to John, Brenda had been using him in some kind of elaborate con. She wasn't just some gold digger like we had initially thought. She was a full-blown identity thief. John claims that he fell for her sob story about a tragic past and her missing family, so he helped her relocate, showering her with money and resources. But the family that he met through video calls apparently were actors, which he claimed that he realized after looking them up. So the elaborate sob story had been totally fabricated, and Brenda had used John's funds to disappear, leaving him with nothing but heartbreak and a mountain of debt. He said that he regretted everything and wanted to make amends. I just got back home from meeting with him, and truth be told, I don't know what to believe anymore. Because even if what he's saying is all true, yes, karma bit him hard, but it doesn't exactly soften my stance. He still abandoned us, and that betrayal still stings. One thing I've always believed in is that talk is cheap. John has a long way to go if he thinks he's going to make amends with us, and that starts with actions, not just words or telling tall tales. So, a new detail has emerged these last few days that has thrown me for a loop about Brenda's other family. According to John, they weren't just some random actors. They were Brenda's accomplices who were part of a larger identity theft ring. John claims that he had no idea that he was just a pawn in her game. But honestly, how much can you believe a guy who throws his own family under the bus for a con artist? And where was he getting all this sudden information from anyway? Was John truly clueless, or was he playing another angle? Was he trying to sneak his way back into our lives by pinning himself as the victim? The more I thought about it, the more suspicious I became. Here's why. Number 1. The whole other family turned actors, then turned accomplices story. It feels too convenient, too dramatic. Was it a genuine detail, or something he fabricated to gain sympathy? If it was really true, how had he not realized or picked up on any of it in these 2 years with her, and only does so now when she's conveniently gone? Number 2. His past behavior. Let's not forget that John has a history of making impulsive decisions and leaving messes for others to clean up. Marrying Brenda, moving states, abandoning us, all of those were hasty moves. And they didn't exactly paint a picture of someone who was entirely honest or level-headed. Maybe it was getting all this information overloaded on me at once or something, but I ended up deciding to do what any self-respecting, tech-savvy individual would. I scoured Brenda and John's social media and public records, and this last one might sound a bit overkill to you, but I got a friend of mine who knew a private investigator to put me in touch. I know hiring a PI is kind of a gray area, but I was desperate and really needed someone with better skills, equipment, and tactics to look into the matter for me. This guy happens to be not just any PI, but one who specializes in cybercrime and ethical hacking. And thank the heavens I did that, because what I found, well, let's just say it wasn't what I would have ever expected in a million years. So among the things that the PI found out, it turns out that firstly, this other family of Brenda's actually existed, but not as John described them. To put it more plainly, there was a family involved, but they weren't actors or accomplices, but rather victims who had been targeted by the same identity theft ring that Brenda belonged to. Their lives upended by stolen identities and financial ruin. And guess who had been unknowingly, or maybe knowingly, funneling money to this ring through investments? Yup, you guessed it, John. Now, I'm at a crossroads. Was John truly a victim? Or was he deeper in this mess than he was letting on? Do I believe John's story and risk getting hurt again? Or do I push him away and risk losing any chance of reconciliation, if there even is one? Alternatively, do I confront him, demand the whole truth, and see where the chips fall? This whole situation is a mind-boggling one. A part of me wants to believe the worst-case scenario, which would be seeing him as a remorseful father who made a terrible mistake. But the other part, the scarred part, remembers how easily he abandoned his family and wondered what else he was capable of. So Reddit, I'm asking you again, am I the a-hole? Am I being too harsh on a man who might be genuinely remorseful? Or am I right to be cautious, to protect myself and grandma from further harm? P.S. Does anyone have experience with identity theft rings? Asking for a friend, or maybe for myself. I'm not sure anymore. So a big update on more dirt than my PI managed to dig up on John over the past few weeks. Honestly, I couldn't quite believe it when I first heard all of this myself, so brace yourselves. Firstly, John's involvement in Brenda's identity theft ring wasn't just financial. It was a lot more hands-on than that. It turns out that he had been using the dark web, yes, that underbelly of the internet, as a personal playground, trading stolen identities and information like they were baseball cards. So the dad who abandoned me and grandma, the man who claimed he was manipulated, was actually knee-deep in the darkest corners of the internet, profiting from other people's misery. After everything that had happened, I didn't exactly have the best opinion of John, but never did I think that he'd get involved in something this bad. But wait, the details are even worse. The PI found evidence of John accessing forums on marketplaces, specializing in identity theft, using aliases and encrypted communication to cover his tracks. He was buying and selling social security numbers, driver's license, and even medical records, all for a hefty price. The report mentioned a specific username John used, a string of characters that sent literal chills down my spine when I learned what it was, because it was the same username I remember seeing countless times years and years ago when I'd been a kid fooling around on my dad's laptop. The connection hit me like a ton of bricks in the head, because this meant that John was not just a victim, but an accomplice, and that he had been working with Brenda from the beginning. Maybe even using her as a front while he played his own shady game on the dark web. The thought was unbearable. The man who was supposed to be my father, the one I had looked up to as a kid, was a predator, preying on the vulnerable for his own gain. But then, another tidbit popped up. When was it gonna stop? The PI dug deeper, tracing John's username through the dark web labyrinth. He found connections, not just to the identity theft forum, but to other, more sinister corners. Child exploitation rings, illegal weapon sales, and even drug trafficking. The thought of John being involved in all that, him being not just a thief but a monster, lurking in the darkest recesses of the internet, made my blood run cold. Okay, to be fair, the PI did warn me and said the evidence for this bit was circumstantial and that it could have been someone else using his username too, but the possibility was still chilling nonetheless. Now, I'm at a crossroads, a place I have never thought I'd be. Do I confront John with the PI's findings and expose him for the monster he might be? Or do I protect Grandma, who still clings to the hope for reconciliation, and risk letting a potentially dangerous man roam free? The choice feels like a betrayal of either myself or my grandma. I don't know if I can even trust my own judgment anymore, because every time I think I understand what happened, another layer unfolds, leaving me more confused and scared than before. What do you think I should do? Should I expose the truth, no matter how painful, or should I prioritize Grandma's hope and keep silent? The weight of this decision feels heavier than anything I've ever carried, and I don't know what the right thing to do is anymore. It turns out that before I could make a choice on whether to confront John or stay silent, there was yet more to uncover about what led him to this whole identity theft business in the first place. It seemed that John's dark web activities weren't just about greed or thrill-seeking, as I had initially thought. There was a deeper motive, fueled by a personal tragedy. Years ago, when I was still a toddler, John lost someone close to him, my mother, in a hit-and-run accident. The driver was never caught, and the case was closed. Of course, I was already familiar with this story and was aware of it. I'd asked and been told enough times about how my mom had passed away that I could recall it in my sleep. But I hadn't known that this would set my dad down some twisted criminal path. It seems that John believed that the accident wasn't random, that the dark web held the key to finding the culprit, and that he'd be able to get some form of justice for Mom's death. That's how he stumbled upon Brenda. All this was pieced together by the PI after scouring through John's earliest dark web activities. But here's the kicker. Brenda wasn't just a random con artist. She was, according to the PI, part of a larger network. My mind reeled at how the woman who exploited John could possibly be a part of a group powerful enough to cause a real trouble for all of us. Was she working for someone else? Or was she the one in charge? Was she keeping tabs on us even now? The more that I thought about it, the more pieces fell into place. Brenda's initial sob story about a missing family mirrored John's own loss. She played on his vulnerabilities and his desperation for answers and used him as a pawn in her own game. He started off financing her operations, believing that he was getting closer to solving the mystery of his wife's death, while she manipulated him further, keeping him trapped in a web of lies and deceit, until he finally ended up in the thick of her ring too. But one thing that confused me was what her endgame is at the end of it all. Had she been after John's money all along, Or was there something more sinister at play? The truth feels like a bottomless pit. Each one of these revelations feels like I'm being pulled deeper into the darkness. But it looks like, as of now, I'm faced with two choices that both equally terrify me. Number 1. Expose John and Brenda and bring their twisted games to light. This path could lead to justice, but also put me and Grandma in the crosshairs of John's possible rage and Brenda's shady group, whatever they were. Or, number 2, keep silent, protect Grandma's hope and my own safety, but allow things to fester and let Brenda's schemes continue. This path feels like a betrayal, a compromise with my conscience, but it might offer a fragile sense of peace and not disturb our lives too much. I know there's no clear-cut answer here and no obvious path forward, but I'm starting to feel paranoid the more I think about all this stuff, as if I have to watch my back every minute of the day. It bothers me a lot, to an extent I can't even begin to describe. But one thing that's becoming clear to me is that I can't just not do anything anymore. I have to either act or choose not to act, and face whatever consequences come with that head on. Remember the impossible choice I was stressing about? Well, I made it. I finally confronted John, not with accusations, but with the cold, hard evidence the PI had gathered. His initial reaction to everything was, of course, to deny it. He yelled for a bit about how I didn't know what I was talking about. But as I laid out the facts and exposed the lies one by one, all of the anger disappeared, replaced by a hollow emptiness, as if he realized it was pointless to hide it any longer. John finally confessed to everything. He admitted his grief, his obsession, and his descent into darkness through the dark web. He spoke of Brenda's manipulation, the elaborate facade she built, and his belief that he was getting closer to finding my mother's supposed killer. He said he had distanced himself from me and Grandma so that none of these shady dealings could affect us, and that's why he had moved away from us too. He also confessed that he made up that story about speaking to Brenda's family, but it was only because his desire to reconnect with us after she pulled her sudden disappearing act had been genuine. And he didn't think I'd give him a chance if I wasn't informed, at least to some extent, that Brenda was the bad guy here. He'd just gone about a twisted way of revealing it. Overall, he seemed full of regret, and maybe also a realization of the monster he'd become. Now, the whole truth about Brenda bit wasn't exactly new information to me, since I'd already heard it from the PI, but it didn't make it any easier to digest the second time around. She had used John's obsession with Mom's death as an opportunity, exploiting his vulnerability to build her a network and manipulating him into financing her dark web operations. He wasn't just a victim, he had been a pawn in her games. My confrontation with John and his confession actually triggered a chain of reaction. I ended up persuading him that it was the best course of action to go to the authorities. He has agreed. With his help, along with whatever the PI had unearthed that could be shared with authorities, I am confident that they would have an idea of how to track down Brenda's group and apprehend her and her members. I'm not stupid though, and neither is John, and I know this would come at a cost. John's confession and the evidence of his dark web activities mean that he's going to have his own share of legal troubles to deal with. He wouldn't be facing the death penalty for it, but his future would be uncertain, shrouded in the consequences of his actions. I guess we won't know for sure till the deed is done. It has been 2 months since I last posted. This is going to be my last update for you guys on this twisted saga. As agreed, John went to the authorities and turned himself in. Breaking the news to Grandma was the hardest part. She was shocked and disappointed, but most of all, saddened that her son had gotten involved in a crime ring due to his grief and vengeance. But ultimately, she came to accept everything that had happened and was glad that John was finally taking responsibility for his actions. She was proud of him even, which made me think that maybe there was something salvageable among this wreck that was our family, after all. Then about a month ago, an officer in charge of the case contacted me to tell me that they had found something connected to me with regard to the case. I learned that they had found a hidden file on Brenda's server containing detailed information about me, Grandma, and even my online activities. Sort of like a creepy dossier, documenting my life and movements. Brenda's organization, it turned out, had been collecting information on me just in case John decided to break his silence. Apparently, they had a habit of keeping collateral and silencing anyone who could potentially expose them. But then, thanks to John, who was fueled by guilt and a desperate desire to make amends to me and Grandma, their plans, connections, and the hidden server location where they store their incriminating data all came to light. The authorities raided the server, uncovering a treasure trove of evidence, stolen identities, blackmail material, even plans for future cyber attacks. It was a digital goldmine, leading to the dismantling of Brenda's entire group, which turned out to be her and another 5 individuals and their arrests. Justice finally seems to have been served. Brenda and her cronies are currently locked away, pending further investigations and facing charges that would keep them behind bars for a long time. As for John, they are saying that his cooperation could possibly earn him some leniency, a reduced sentence, and a chance at redemption through community service and rehabilitation programs. We'll have to wait to find out more about that. It wasn't the ending that I expected, but it wasn't the worst ending either. John isn't free, but he's not the lost cause that I once thought he was. His actions had consequences, but his last act of stepping up and taking responsibility for his mistakes offered some hope for his future. As for me, the emotional roller coaster hasn't stopped. The fear and paranoia are still there after everything that has happened, but there's also a sense of closure, I guess. I had faced the unexpected, survived invisible threats and truth bombs, and emerged stronger and more resilient for it. I'm relieved knowing that Brenda and her associates are behind bars with a hefty sentence to follow. But seeing John broken and facing his demons still stirs a complex mix of emotions in me. Anger for his betrayal, sadness for his pain, and maybe a little hope for potential redemption. Grandma has been my anchor throughout this entire ordeal. Her unwavering love for John, even now, is a testament to her strength and forgiveness. Whether he can truly earn it, only time will tell, I suppose. To everyone who has followed along and who has offered their support and guidance throughout all this, thank you so much. Stay safe online and stay close to your family members. And that was it for today's story. Thank you very much for listening. Smash that like button for me and subscribe for more stories. Thanks again. We'll be seeing you in the next one.